Black Dahlia case is about a young woman who was brutally murdered and mutilated. Her body was completely severed in half and left on the side of the road to be found by a young woman on a morning walk on January 15th, 1947. But the Black Dahlia case is much bigger than the young woman Elizabeth Short could have ever realized, and more than we ever could have realized. Black Dahlia case is a conversation about death and murder, of course, but also how we, as partially deranged fanatics of true crime and society, police, and journalists, have a tendency to take a narrative and run with it, regardless of if it's the truth or not. And maybe more importantly, this conversation is really just about how women are treated when we're alive, but also when we're dead. Elizabeth Short's story begins in Medford, Massachusetts on July 29th, 1924. She was born to parents Phoebe and Cleo Short, and when she was just 5 years old, her father had disappeared, which then led people to believe that he had committed suicide, but he had not. He appeared back at home and apologized to his wife for disappearing like that on his family, but she would not take him back, and he moved to the West Coast. In her youth, Elizabeth had developed a passion for filmography, specifically acting. When Elizabeth had turned 19, she decided to go to California to visit her father. She stayed with him for a very long time, but he then kicked her out for not doing anything with her life. Elizabeth was known to date a lot of different men, which is a conversation we're going to get into later, but that's also another reason why her father kicked her out, is because of the amount of men that she would bring around. She took a job at the Base Exchange at Camp Cook near Lompoc, California. She briefly had lived with a United States Army Air Force sergeant who abused her horrifically. She left Lompoc in mid-1943 and had moved to Santa Barbara, where she was in fact arrested at a bar for underage drinking on September 23rd. Authorities had sent her back to Massachusetts, but decided to go to Florida instead. Every true crime case has a Florida arc, if you haven't noticed, and only occasionally did she visit her family in Massachusetts. While in Florida, she had met Major Matthew Michael Gordon Jr., a decorated Army Air Force officer who was training for deployment to Southeast Asian theater of World War II. Short had told friends that he wanted to propose to her, but from other sources I've heard that they actually were married. However, he did in fact propose to her. She said yes, and unfortunately he died in a plane crash on August 10th, 1945. Short had moved back to California in July of 1946, and this time she lived in Los Angeles to visit a military friend from Florida. Short had spent the last 6 months of her life in California, and she worked as a waitress and rented a room behind the Florentine Gardens nightclub on Hollywood Boulevard. Elizabeth was in Los Angeles because she wanted to be an actress at the end of the day, but she did not have a permanent residence, and she was more of a nomad than anything else. She shared a small apartment with 8 other women for a period, and during this time it was reported that she was, in fact, broke. Elizabeth was known to go on dates for meals and money, and she was described to be a bright young woman, but she did have her secrets. She was described as elusive and preferred the acquaintance of strangers over close friends. Very often, she met men at nightclubs. After her death in January, several men who were questioned by the police recalled that they did enjoy her company, but she did struggle financially and always seemed to come up with the money for rent and necessities. Everyone said the same thing about her. She was secretive, and she never really said where she was going or who she was meeting. But shortly before her murder, Elizabeth had relocated to San Diego and had told close friends that she was scared, but would give no reason as to why. When she arrived in San Diego, she had met a woman named Dorothy French, who had taken her in to live with her family. During her time with them, Elizabeth admitted to hiding from an ex-boyfriend out of fear. French revealed that several weeks into Short's stay, a woman and 2 men came to the home looking for her. Upon hearing about the visitors, Short had become very frightened and panicky, refusing to see them. They left, and she decided to relocate. Short had departed on January 8th with a salesman she had been seeing. They drove back to LA together, and he dropped her off at the Biltmore Hotel, where she had claimed to be meeting her sister, who later had told authorities that they had no plans to meet. But this was a big reason why the Black Dahlia case is so elusive. She was a liar, and we will never know why. Hotel employees had recounted seeing Elizabeth make several telephone calls in the lobby that evening, growing increasingly frantic. She departed the hotel at around 10 p.m., where she was last seen alive. The next few days of her life are a complete mystery. Her exact location is unknown, aside from sporadic sightings that could or could not have been her and an alleged encounter with Officer Merle McBride, who claimed to have seen Short on January 14th, just hours before she was found dead. McBride had told authorities that the woman, believed to be Elizabeth, had approached her sobbing in terror and claimed that somebody had threatened to kill her. She appeared too shaken up to return to the bar she had been in to retrieve her purse, so McBride had accompanied her. By then, the man was gone and McBride left Short behind. Later that night, McBride saw Short exiting the bar with 2 men and a woman, possibly the 2 men and a woman that she was completely petrified of just a couple days earlier, and the officer had checked on her. Although she appeared to be completely fine, she was found dead just hours later. On the morning of January 15th, 1947, her body was discovered by a young mother on a walk with her child through Leimert Park, an LA neighborhood that was underdeveloped at the time. Noticing the body from afar, she believed it to be a mannequin left on the side of the road because of how pale white the skin was and a contorted position of the limbs. But as she approached the body, it was, in fact, more horrific than she ever thought. Though her internal organs were removed, the body was drained completely of its blood, proving to investigators that Short had been killed somewhere else. Her face was cut to the bone in a Glasgow smile, a grisly slouch from her mouth all the way to her ears, on both sides. The coroner that her body was taken to believed that the cutting of her face is what killed her, as well as the blows to her head. She was completely sawed in half, her torso several feet from her chest. In the photos, her chest cavity is a hole. You can see straight inside of it. Her killer had brutally mutilated her genitalia, which has been a big conversation of the case for a long time, for a reason we will get into very soon, but he cut lacerations on the fatty tissue on top of her vagina, known as the mons pubis. Her labia and intervaginal organs were also mutilated brutally as well. She had a rose tattoo on her thigh, and it was cut off and stuffed inside of her vagina, along with grass. From the ground that she laid on. Her legs were spread completely open in a gruesome and just dehumanizing position, and her arms were posed above her head on purpose. Her nipples were completely cut off, and intestines removed in positions underneath her buttocks. Due to the dew on her body, she had been placed there sometime after 2 a.m., but before dawn, and that she had been dead for approximately 10 hours. At the time, they had no idea how to identify her, so they had sent her fingerprints to FBI headquarters in Washington, and a match was in fact found. Short had her fingerprints taken on 2 occasions, one for the arrest in California for drinking underage, and one for when she was working in a mailroom at a military base. The details of her life and her murder are one thing, but it's important to remember and recall that Elizabeth Short was in fact a human being. I don't think I need to say that, with aspirations and dreams. That's why she was in California in the first place. That's why she's dead. She was only 22 when she died in this manner, and it's been almost 80 years since her death. But even after 80 years, we are still talking about her death and theorizing about her death, because that's the mystery of it all. We don't know Elizabeth Short. We hardly even knew anything about her. We know the gruesome details of her death and the dehumanizing way that she was treated, but we don't know anything further, and we especially, to this day, don't know who killed her. I want to talk about the theories surrounding her death, like her actual, physical, embodied, and mutilated corpse, because there are many, many misconceptions about her that we take for fact. Claim number 1. She was pregnant. This is false. There is no evidence or official autopsy finding to suggest that she was pregnant at the time of her death, and this was a rumor that was made up after she died, right after. It was already printed in newspapers only weeks after she died. I don't know who came up with that. Claim number 2, intersexuality. She was not. For a long time, people thought that she had both a penis and a vagina. I don't know why. There is no evidence supporting this. The autopsy did not mention it at all, and the coroner did not say anything about it either. So this leads us to believe that she was in fact not intersex, but this is something that you will see in books about her, and they will talk about it as if it is fact because it has been talked about as fact for so long, but she was in fact not intersex. Claim number 3. She was a prostitute. Okay. This is a part of a bigger conversation, but she was a hopeless romantic, but she was in fact not a prostitute like many believe she is. She just had many male friends and many boyfriends. But as far as we know, she was not being paid to have sex for money. Claim number 4. She was tortured for days. We don't know for certain, but professionals say no. There is no evidence supporting this, especially because McBride was with her just the day before. If that is Elizabeth Short, but I believe that it is. Many people continue to theorize about her death, and some claims are way more grisly and disgusting than just these ones. Maybe I'll give a few, but these are the most popular surrounding the Black Dahlia. Another one, and I wasn't going to put this in the video because it's disgusting, but whatever. Another one, journalists made up the claim that she was forced to eat her own feces. False. That didn't happen. There's no proof or evidence or anything backing that up. What I don't understand about making up claims like this is her death is already gruesome enough. She was cut in half. She was stuffed like a fucking pig. She was dehumanized in every possible way a human being could be dehumanized. Why dehumanize her further? Why make up claims about her death that we know aren't true? I don't understand lying. I don't understand, just making shit up for no reason. Probably one of the worst crime scenes I've ever seen. Because, of course, I've seen the actual crime scene photos of her body. It's pretty bad. I don't think that there was a need to make up all of these myths and claims. And then, for so long, we have read and taken those in as fact when they are, in fact, not fact. So, it's... but this is what I mean when we say we find a narrative and we run with it. But anyway, there have been many men under questioning for her death, and only a few could be the actual perpetrator or perpetrators, because at the time, people believed that there could have been multiple killers. For a time, detectives believed it even could have been a woman. But the truth is, realistically, and especially for the time that it was, the killer was almost 100% a man. And it was most certainly a lonesome act. Who killed the Black Dahlia? Many, many men have been named suspects in the case, whether it's due to the police just wanting to put the blame on an innocent so we can move on, or actually try to get justice for a young woman. The list of suspects is strenuous. It ranges from military men to doctors to writers. Leslie Dillon was an ex-mortician who had come under suspicion in 1949 after writing letters to the police department, blaming the murder on his friend Jeff Connors. However, detectives had convinced themselves that Leslie's friend, Jeff Connors, was just in fact himself, Leslie, as the details were only that of someone who killed Elizabeth themselves. His past as a mortician also had raised eyebrows. However, it was confirmed that he was not the murderer, and only one of the many attention-seeking men who decided to turn themselves in on the name of murdering Elizabeth Short. Mark Hansen was a nightclub owner who had a personal friendly contact with Short. She stayed at his house on 2 different occasions, and Hansen had a history of befriending young women who were down on their luck or going through some bullshit, and would support them financially in return for sexual favors. So, prostitutes. He would turn women into prostitutes for his own gain. He was cleared by the LAPD after finding no real evidence linking him to the case. I read about Mark Hansen in a couple books now, because I am reading several Black Dahlia books. But the Black Dahlia files, he is mentioned a lot in the Black Dahlia files. Robert Red Manley came under suspicion as he was one of the last known people to be seen with Elizabeth. He drove her from San Diego to Los Angeles on January 9th, 1947. He had dropped her at the Biltmore Hotel and later picked her up. He was, in fact, attracted to her, and this was a test of loyalty to his wife. The LAPD had dismissed him, again, because there was no real evidence linking him to the crime. No DNA evidence or anything like that. The most reliable and obvious man would have been George Hodel. And there's a lot of reasons for this. Born on October 10th, 1907, he was an American physician. Due to the details of Elizabeth's murder, that type of precision of the sawing of her body, removal of intestines, was not done by an amateur. Her killer was somebody with a medical background, of which George Hodel did in fact have. And regardless of whether he is the Black Dahlia killer, he's a piece of shit, okay? His daughter had accused him of impregnating her and abusing her. This is another big red flag for him as a prime suspect in this case because he was already a very, very bad man. So he is capable of doing bad things. But his son, Steve Hodel, wrote an entire book about how his father was in fact the Dahlia killer. It's not taken in as fact, and it did not close the case, but there is some very good information in the book titled Most Evil. And of course, you guessed it, I do have it. I found this for $2 at a little, like, small business in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So, what a find. What a fucking find. Why is Elizabeth Short called the Black Dahlia? It's not for any crazy reason, like, she was known to wear black clothing and she had black hair. That's really why. Those were her trademarks, and that's how people remembered her and identified her. But there was a drugstore in California named the Black Dahlia, and young men who frequented the drugstore had named her that. So that is a big question in the case, so I just thought I would answer it. If you asked me what I thought about Elizabeth Short when she was alive, I'd say that she was definitely lost. But she had ambition. She wanted to be an actress, and like every other young woman aspiring to be an actress in the 40s, she had moved to California in hopes of finding stardom. But it's very easy to get involved with the wrong crowd when it comes to Hollywood, back then and especially today. I think her death is linked to something bigger than we ever have even talked about or imagined. When you get into the Hollywood lore, and its links to our politics and our celebrities and our religions and the entertainment industry as just a whole, it is an evil place regardless of how pure your heart is, how pure your intentions are going into it. And I believe that Elizabeth Short probably got caught up in the wrong crowd and maybe even involved in the Hollywood mafia of the 40s. We don't know the names of the people that she was reportedly terrified of, but I think that's on purpose. I think we do know the names of those people, but it's almost most certainly not public information for a reason. But it is surely in the case's private file, in the LAPD files, somewhere. And unfortunately, Elizabeth Short is one of the many, many young, innocent souls who got caught up in Hollywood evil. The same thing happened to Marilyn Monroe. They were friends, by the way, which is insane. They hung out at the same bars, and it's reported that Marilyn was absolutely terrified after her death, as any young woman would be. Some have even tried to link her death to the Zodiac Killer because the two cases have a lot in common with the military and medical backgrounds, but some sources have even said that they knew each other, but I don't know how we wouldn't really, like, confirm that because we don't even know who the Zodiac Killer is, so... Sorry, allegedly, we don't know who the Zodiac Killer is. Now, we don't know if this is true or not, and it's not up to me to decide, but I think there is a strong possibility that the Zodiac Killer and the Black Dahlia case are in fact linked. I don't see why they wouldn't be in some way. But after her death, the LAPD had received several letters from an anonymous source about Elizabeth Short. The letters were written using cutout magazine words, and it was eerie. And detectives did their best to try and find the killer. Nothing came of it, obviously, because we still don't know who killed her, so... You know, but the letters were definitely threatening. She was treated horribly when she was alive, with the history of abuse and the fact that her alleged fiance died in a plane crash. She already had a shit life, and she has been treated horribly for all 80 years that she has not been on the planet. Whether it's the fake news, the pregnancy and intersexuality claims, which have never, and I mean like never, had anything to even back them up or provide evidence to either claim, or just the fact that people slut shame her, call her a prostitute, which, okay, like, I don't want to get, like, into it, but it's like, men in those days were, were sluts, okay? They were fucking anything that walked. Men these days fuck anything that walked, but back then, and you're gonna sit here and slut shame Elizabeth Short for dating men and having male friends. It's just not making sense to me. I can almost promise you that if the Black Dahlia was a man, if Elizabeth Short was a man, I don't even know if I'd be making this video. I don't even know if I'd be making this video, because I don't know if it would have blown up in the way that it did, which is an issue. And I also low-key think we would have found the killer. I have nothing to like back that claim up, okay? Like, that's like an empty claim, but that's how I feel. I'm so sorry. And there almost for sure would not have been rumors about the case the way there is now. Between the rumors and then the movie The Black Dahlia, which, by the way, awful movie, but, and the only scene I like in that is the scene where her body's found. But in that movie they portray her as like a porn star and like a slut and whatever, and it's just like, but why? Like, why? The rumors of pregnancy, intersexuality, and prostitution are more popular than the actual truth, and people still attach those things to the case and pretend it's fact. I almost wish it was. I almost wish it was, so that we would have more about her, so that we could know something about her. The only thing we know for certain about Elizabeth Short is the horrific way that she died, and that is an awful way to be remembered. She deserves a hell of a lot better than that, in my opinion, okay? I don't know why, but like, I have such an attachment to this case, to Elizabeth Short, because I'll get into it in a minute. I think we should stop remembering her as the Black Dahlia woman who was found mutilated on the side of the street, and more so remember her as Elizabeth Short. She was an ambitious young woman who had moved to California thinking that she was doing the right thing by following her dreams, because that's what we get told. Follow your dreams. This case touches me because I too am a young woman. A young and ambitious woman. I always say that sometimes true crime feels like fiction, because of the way that we detach ourselves from it in an unhealthy manner as fans of the genre, with TV shows and movies and just the way that we talk about it. There is definitely a detachment from reality, but this case, especially for me, is a reminder that not every day is promised, and not every death is promised to be a peaceful one. And another thing that I did not put in the script, and I don't know why, is after she died, okay, the detectives on her case called her mother, asking if it was Elizabeth Short's mother, and she said yes. They had a conversation about how great Elizabeth is. She didn't know that it was detectives on the phone. They thought it was a beauty pageant. She thought it was a beauty pageant, and the detectives tell the mom that she won in a beauty pageant, and then the mom goes on about how beautiful her Elizabeth is, and then the detectives say, actually, your daughter's dead. What the fuck? And that's like confirmed. Like, I've read that in multiple books now. Are we joking? And with that, thank you for watching. follow me on my Instagram. I have everything linked down below. I have an email that you can reach me at. Please subscribe, like, and comment. I never did master the whole outro thing, did I? Subscribe, like, and comment. And I'll see you next time I upload Tuesdays and Saturdays. I have a lot of content planned for the next couple of weeks, especially because I took last week off. Thank you for 800 subscribers. Again, I am so incredibly grateful. I hope to see you again.